Venompool has a new cooking meter, which begins at 50 charges and gains 10 more charges every 5 seconds. Any attack from either champion grants 4 charges, and each time the cooking meter hits 100, that amount is spent to grant a random, unique, indefinite blender buff. The following are all the blender buffs that Venompool can gain. A Precision, gaining plus 700 critical rating, Energize, plus 15% combat power rate, Clintar Mutation, gaining increased attack rating, and if the opponent is a Spider-Verse champion, attacks will ignore passive evade effects. Hunter Spider, attacks deal a burst of additional 25% physical damage. Malice, which has up to a 100% Fury buff potency, based on how long the fight has gone on. The max bonus for this is at 200 seconds. Blender buffs do not stack. Once Venompool has acquired all 5 of the blender buffs, he will instead begin stacking Fury buffs, with each granting an increased attack rating for 60 seconds. While fighting tech champions, Venompool gains an immunity to Power Drain, Power Burn, and Shock effects, as well as Armor Break debuffs. If an effect is prevented this way, he will gain 50 cooking meter. The cooldown on this is 2 seconds. Using the heavy attack, Venompool will re-roll the most recently gained blender buff, and if the opponent is knocked down, there is a 100% chance to gain a vicious buff, increasing the potency of damage over time debuffs by 60%. This lasts for 5 seconds per unique buff. All special attacks have a 100% chance to inflict a bleed debuff lasting 6 seconds, and causing direct damage per level of special attack used. While fighting #robot champions, this bleed debuff becomes a matching degeneration debuff. Each hit of the special attack 1 has a 75% chance to nom one of each unique buff on the opponent, removing it and granting 50 cooking meter. If the nommed buff was an armor up, also gain a regeneration buff, recovering health over 5 seconds. If the special attack 2 is used to intercept the opponent, there is a 100% chance to inflict a stun debuff for 3 seconds. If Venompool is also allowed to finish his moonwalk after the attack, he gains a temporary duplicate of each of his blender buffs, each lasting 20 seconds. If his dance, however, is interrupted, Venompool instead gains a power gain buff, granting 1 bar of power over 10 seconds. Using the special 3, Venompool's cooking meter becomes spicy for 20 seconds, which causes it to build up twice as fast. If the cooking meter hits 100 while it is spicy, all personal bleed and degeneration debuffs on the opponent are paused for 8 seconds. An awakened Venompool is given access to pre-fight abilities. Venompool begins each quest with 1 persistent charge, which he can spend in the pre-fight menu to select 1 blender buff as his fave food for the next fight. The fave food is more likely to be chosen at random and gains 60% potency. Each time Venompool enters a fight, he gains his persistent charge back. Venompool is a champion that caters better to longer fights. Again, to maximize his damage and his potential, you will want to gain all of his blender buffs and then begin to stack his fury buffs. However, that does not mean that he is useless in shorter fights, and the rotations for both longer and shorter fights, in my opinion, is basically the same. You don't really need the special 3, although you can use it to increase that spice meter, granting faster access to abilities. However, what I have found more useful is to either alternate between the special 1 and special 2, or to solely use the special 2. Incorporating the special 1 into your strategy will help you to gain access to all of your blender buffs faster, thus then gaining access to your fury buffs faster. So what you'll want to do is continuously fire off your special 1 until you have hit most of your blender buffs, if not all of them. Then you will begin to stack furies. Then you will rotate into your special 2. In shorter fights, I did not find much benefit to completing the moonwalk mechanic of the special 2 and duplicating your buffs. However, in a longer fight, this would be very beneficial, but more often than not, whether long or short fight, I did find that what I would do is interrupt that animation, thus gaining my power gain buff. When you do this and couple it with your basic attacks, you'll find that you'll gain your special 2 again very, very quickly, allowing you to rinse and repeat special 2 usage throughout the rest of the fight. Don't forget that if you are fighting a champion that has an armor up buff on them, you can use your special 1 to Om-Nom the buff and convert it into a rather powerful regeneration buff for Venompool. Finally, to maximize the potency of your damage over time effects, do not forget before you throw a special 1 or a special 2 to strike the opponent with a heavy attack. This will give Venompool the vicious buff, increasing the potency of damage over time effects by 60%.